and welcome to the Abundology podcast. I'm so excited because I'm here today with Cara James, Intuitive Astrologer. Thank you so much for coming back. I loved your 2020 highlights when you came the first time. So many people have been asking about the coronavirus in astrology and if it's shown up before and if this is a pattern. So I wanted to have you back to talk about that, and then of course other things that are happening right now out in the world. So let's just jump right in.
Sounds great today. Yeah, gosh, the year really has started with a bang.
Yes, it has.
Which we anticipated and talked about when I was here in January. So we talked then about different cycles and seasons.
Yes.
And most of us are used to our earth seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter. But we also are in cosmic seasons. And this year it kicked off a whole new thing with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So we talked a lot about that last time.
Yes, we did.
About how this is the start of a 30-plus year cycle, where we're looking at abuse and power and authority and control and major changes happening on a societal level around those themes, but we weren't sure exactly what form that would take.
Yeah.
We just knew these are some themes that we could see from that cosmic cycle by looking back at history. And sure enough, the coronavirus pops up, and we're already seeing those themes get exposed with the virus.
Yeah, right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
And maybe it shouldn't be a surprise per se. Actually, the last Saturn-Pluto conjunction cycle uncovered the AIDS virus in the early 80s.
Okay.
So that's been part of the cycle, exposing things like that. Also times of recession and other things that we're seeing.
Changes in governments,
financially
that sort of
as well.
things.
Yeah. So we're really right on cue cosmically for what we anticipated seeing in this time.
Yeah. So the season, the Saturn-Pluto season, that is a time where throughout history we've seen other illnesses and viruses and stuff pop up, these cycles.
Yeah, we have. But I think even more than it just being about health, it's what those health issues bring up and show us in society.
Yeah.
So we're seeing those inequalities show up around who can get care, who can afford to take time off of work. I think we're going to see that a lot more in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, that's a really good point, bringing up like who can afford to go to Costco and buy $1,000 worth of supplies, and who can afford not even one to take a day off work, or they can't feed their family or pay their rent. Yes, so this is pointing out the inequalities in our system, our society.
Absolutely, and that's how Pluto likes to work. It gets below the surface, it exposes the cracks in society and brings those things to light. So it's doing a fantastic job via the coronavirus.
It is, yeah.
And we have a chance to, as people, rise up and make requests of our authority figures from this. And so that's the high side, what I hope to see throughout. We don't know exactly yet how long the coronavirus will be with us, but the impact of it can be with us for a long time, and we can really use it to our benefit to look out for those people who have less.
Yes, and pointing out the places in our society where it's broken and we need to fix it.
Exactly.
Before perhaps something else comes along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's this season of the Saturn-Pluto that's here, and the coronavirus is, which I really like looking at that, is it's pointing out, it's the I don't know what you would call it, the tool that is pointing out the inequalities in our system and what's under the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's another cosmic season that we're in as well. It's the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. I know it can get confusing because several of the planets are meeting up in different configurations this year. But the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction was just really getting started in the last few weeks, and it will be exact in April, June, and November. And before the year started, I was taking a look at the planets, and I thought, we're going to see more things come out around our borders, because Jupiter rules other people, foreign places, how we relate to people who are different from us. And Pluto can can expose things that have not been going well. It can expose abuses of power. And so I thought, especially being an election year, and especially with the agendas that we've seen in the recent past, this issue of our borders was going to be heightened, and we might see more injustice at our borders as well. So I didn't know it would take the form of a virus exposing that, but we are seeing massive issues in our borders.
Yes.
Closing borders around the world to protect. But we're also seeing some healing that may be present across borders, with countries coming together and sharing knowledge, and our doctors and researchers bringing things together for healing. So the planets have multiple angles. They have high sides and they have low sides and different expressions. And so we're seeing several expressions of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction cycle too.
Yeah, well, thanks for pointing that out, because I think sometimes we get stuck on the negatives that are happening, the virus and they're closing the borders and the poor kids in cages at the borders and all that. But you're right. This is a time where really the world is coming together to share knowledge and to stop spreads by closing their borders to protect other countries and then their people too, of course. But yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, the virus has really shown us that we are truly a global village.
Yes.
People are moving and interacting all across the world. We are in it together.
Yes.
And I think that's the real test of this coronavirus, is how can we as people show up for one another, take responsibility for ourselves and others, and extend beyond just our limited circles.
And what a fabulous way to look at it versus, us all hibernating at home with our Netflix and our extra toilet paper, and worrying really about us, when we're getting that bigger picture that we are all in this together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's one of the benefits of astrology. It gives you that insight. You're able to pull back and see the bigger picture and go, this isn't just a random point in time, but this is, in a way, by design to wake us up in different ways as a people.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So health-wise,
Yeah.
what are the things that you see health-wise through these seasons?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, interestingly enough, Saturn, and especially Saturn in Capricorn as it is now, Saturn relates to personal responsibility. So we see that showing up in everyone having to take their own measures, hand washing, taking care of their symptoms, taking care of their people. But we also see in Saturn and Capricorn isolation and loneliness, and we see that in people having to self-quarantine and take care of themselves in that way, which is pretty fascinating. And Pluto itself can bring things about mysteriously, so the mysterious origins of the disease and not knowing how it spread for quite some time, and just some of those things that were unknown is really highlighted health-wise with Pluto being in the mix. And we saw that too with the AIDS epidemic in the early 80s, and it becoming a pandemic over the decades. So yeah, there's a lot for sure there related to healing, and Jupiter, the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction cycle can expand and expose even more. So again, the planets have different expressions. So we might see at those points in time throughout the year when Jupiter and Pluto meet up, we might see an expansion around health issues in a challenging way, but we could also see expansions of healing and coming together. So we'll have to see how the year goes. But
so they come together, is it 3 times this year, like April, June, and November?
Three times this year, exactly. But they'll still be traveling close throughout
the whole year.
Throughout the whole year, exactly. And that only happens every 13 years that they come together. And it's rare that and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and all these other things happen in the same year. So it's a monumental year one way or another.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so part of this also is we've seen this affect the markets.
Yes.
And our financial systems. And what are you seeing in the charts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we anticipated going into this time.
Yeah.
Historically, we've seen this as a time of recession. We often see the stock markets perform poorly and have challenges during different aspects of the Saturn-Pluto cycle. So again, we're right on cue for that. This week especially, we had Venus, which rules wealth and security. We saw Venus conjunct Uranus, which is a very unstable, unpredictable planet. So it was in an exact relationship on March 8th. And we saw the next day was when we had to
can't make this
close
stuff up.
the stock market down for a while and let things settle down. So, and that relationship stays throughout this week. So
throughout this week, okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then we also have the sun and Mercury until recently were in Pisces, and Mercury had been retrograding. So we see that collective consciousness getting stirred up, and Pisces can relate to fear, and we see that in things playing out personally. We see that playing out in the marketplace as well. So quite fascinating to see that. But in terms of long-term look at the stock market, I'm not a financial astrologer.
No.
There are people who are, and I did a little digging just because I wanted to see, okay, how well can we predict some of these things? And a lot of folks look to Venus and Mercury related to wealth and trade. And there's, with all the different retrogrades and being punctuated by some other wild cards this year, we definitely may have quite a bit of ups and downs, but I could predict maybe a little uptick at the end of March. We'll see. We'll see if that's true. But.
Yeah. It's always neat to take a look at the charts and say, I think this might happen, and then it does happen, or it doesn't, and then you learn for the next time too. Yeah.
Well, one thing that's interesting too is to take a look at the charts of the countries that are involved. So last time we talked a little bit about the United States being a Cancer country, being born on 4th of July, and when you look at the country's chart for the rest of this year, we see retrogrades for Mars and Venus taking place in areas that relate to wealth and health. So we see a lot of having to rethink things not moving as and flowing as smoothly as they might normally related to shared resources and all of that. So we certainly can anticipate ups and downs throughout the year. And really, I mean, the planets are benevolent at best, neutral at worst. So again, they're here to just show and expose. What have we not been looking at?
Yes.
How have the powerful and wealthy been continuing to stay in those positions, and how are we blocking other people from having equal access to resources? So it's neither here nor there to the planets of what happens with the stock market, but the lessons that we can learn from their movements is important.
Yeah, it's very important. And we had talked before about the benefits of this, because once again, I think as a society, we can look at, oh my goodness, these people are sick, there's a health crisis, our market is crashing, the world is ending, all that. But what are the benefits, once again, of this coming out, how it can help us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't think there's going to be a better time in history for the people to step up and make demands of our leadership. So
true.
We'll see, but I mean, there's going to be so many more stories that come out of people without proper health care, of people that have had to miss work, with people who have to take public transportation and can't do so because there's enough quarantines in place that they can't be out and about and be able to get places that don't involve social interaction. I think we also can make some demands around flexible work situations.
Yes.
I think so many companies are starting to see, oh wow, my people don't really need to come into a physical office. They can still get a lot done. Of course, there's inequalities there that not all professions are able to do that, but those things are all getting looked at and exposed. Flexible schooling, we're seeing.
Yes, it's about time with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, but I think first and foremost, taking care of all people having access to the most basic things in society. And also the virus is going to put a spotlight on what's happening around the world. We have entire countries that are incredibly vulnerable due to immune issues and other things that they've been dealing with. So we'll see if there's some leveling of the playing field with this global virus, where we get to see how other people live and how fortunate we've really been.
How fortunate we are, but then also perhaps how our healthcare system doesn't work.
Yes.
When we're seeing other countries, I just looked at some stats this morning about some of the Scandinavian countries doing such an incredible job, not having one person die from this and containing things because of their outstanding health care.
Exactly.
And where we are now with we're kind of, it looks like at this point heading into kind of a disaster area, and people not getting the health care that they need.
Yeah.
So this may really shine a spotlight on, we got to up our game here.
Absolutely. I sure hope so.
I hope so too.
There was a great article today in CNN about Taiwan and their response to the virus. So they're right next to China. You'd expect their numbers to be up really high, but even taking their small population into account, they've been doing really well. And right off the bat, they learned from the SARS virus back in the early 2000s. They sent a fact-finding team to China to scout out what was happening. They close their borders, I think, quicker than anybody. They have a CDC that is really great at monitoring people and have a mechanism where people can self-report their symptoms after traveling. They people that do need to quarantine and heal, they would give 2 weeks worth of pay and resources, not 100% sure about pay, but resources, food and lodging to take care of them. And their universal health care came into play too, where people who normally wouldn't be able to afford to go in and get care were able to do so. So I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
We're able to see how the countries that have really stepped up and taken care of their people well are performing a lot better during this time.
Yeah, and then giving us an opportunity, because let's be real, this is not the last time that there's going to be a virus that goes around on our planet. So this couldn't perhaps be a warning of like, okay, let's get our act together now. Yes. So if the next one is even worse than this, we're prepared, like Taiwan. Yes,
exactly. Well, Saturn and Capricorn, getting serious about responsibility is a big part of the times. So absolutely, how can we take care of our folks and look at efficiency? I mean, we've got people on finding a cure faster than we have for any other thing before. So we're seeing some positive stuff come about with all of that. But of course, there's more to do.
And responsibility as a society, but also personal responsibility.
Exactly.
So what's out there, in the world clearly is going on for our individual selves too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then these transits are happening in our personal lives, so we all may be feeling them in different ways. Saturn can make things feel like they're falling apart. Pluto can put a lot of external pressure on us. So just to highlight that for folks, if they're feeling some of that weight and heaviness of the times, especially if they are a Cancer, or an Aries, or a Libra or a Capricorn, their energies may be especially challenged by this, especially if they're born in the later time of those signs. So we'll be feeling it all in different ways, but for sure, all across the board, we have responsibility to wash our hands, report our symptoms, take care of our people, look out for people that have less.
And look out for our own health.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I mentioned to you that I'm less likely now to just go grab a burger for dinner instead of, eating a nice healthy kale salad and some great juice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is, let's be real, which is what our country kind of needs to get back into taking our own health and our own responsibility for our health seriously.
Absolutely. And Saturn is smiling down happily and proudly at those that are taking those steps for sure. It's all part of the time that we're being asked to do. Tighten our belts. What can we do without? Do we need to go to Costco and have them sell out of all the toilet paper and all of that? And also the themes that we're looking at with Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn relate to the Earth and her resources.
Oh.
And the virus is highlighting globalization, right? And how our industries are all connected and together, and whether or not, I'm sure we all have different political opinions on all of that, but more of that's going to come to light too with this the cycle that we're in.
Well, it's very interesting because thinking that we just started the Saturn-Pluto cycle. I mean, it just started in January, on whatever the date was. And this is the baby stages. We're here for 30 years in this cycle, and we're already here. Wow. So it's really pointing out all of the change to expect.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if we look back to the last Saturn-Pluto conjunction cycle, it was in the Reagan days and trickle-down economics, and this is the way, it's going to benefit society if we look at capitalism this way or that. And then we fast forward to where we are now going, this hasn't really benefited the people. It hasn't really trickled down in the way that we were told.
Yeah, we were told, exactly.
Right, and so now we have some chance to correct things, and then we'll see whatever we start during this cycle, we'll see what happens in the coming decades and how we correct things. But later this year in December, we are in another cosmic season. Jupiter and Saturn will join together in December, and they just do this every 20 years, often lands on an election year like this year. And really, they're going to be coming together in Aquarius, which is a sign that relates to humanity, concern for our fellow brothers and sisters, and it kind of kicks off this catalyst. So I think that most of this year will feel a bit tumultuous, up and down in various ways as we find our footing and more of these issues come out to light. And then we really have that spark of a moment later in the year where we start to move into what's possible for society and what things need to really change. So these are long cycles that we're in.
Long
it's good
cycles. Pace ourselves.
good to be aware of that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
But there's some bright spots throughout the year that really shine a light on what's
Yeah,
possible.
well, that's nice to look forward to. And I like the shift in thinking too, from our world is ending, oh my goodness, we're all going to die,
Yeah.
to wow, this is bringing us together as, as on planet Earth, as societies. How can we help each other out? How are we there for each other? How are things not equal, and how do we make them equal?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then ending in December with the whole humanity part. That's, I have to say, I feel a lot better than I did, 20 minutes ago when we started talking.
Oh, I'm so glad, Renee.
So Saturn is really then about learning, would you say? Is that kind of?
Yeah, at its height, it's about wisdom from experience.
Okay.
So, and we all have Saturn in our personal birth charts in some place. It's usually an area in our lives where we experience hardship, some of our biggest
Okay.
tests and trials. And then through the years and the hardships that they bring, we really develop that inner wisdom that comes from those times. So as a society, we now get to tap into our learned wisdom, our learned experience, and keep developing that as a people.
Yeah. So what advice can you give us when we're through with the charts, when we're thinking about the coronavirus right now?
Yeah.
How to approach it, what to think about it,
Yeah.
how long, perhaps that we may be, thinking about this or it be in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in some ways, I don't want to, it sounds bad. I want us to be thinking about it a fair bit. I hope that at least the themes that we're starting to look at get highlighted in a big way throughout. Hopefully it doesn't require a lot of, or doesn't involve a lot of people losing their lives or their health, but the spotlight being on these important things is helpful and beneficial for sure. In terms of what the year looks like, these Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions can go both ways. So we'll see the first one in April is a little bit more challenged. The others in the year are less so. So definitely March and April have more focus on challenges related to health and healing. And then there's some more supportive energy later in the year. Let's see, what else did you say, Renee?
I can't remember. Just, I like the idea that we're not focusing on the coronavirus, but what is bringing to light.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way I practice astrology with my individual clients too. It's like, what can we learn from this challenging period in your life? How can we transmute that into something really, really positive? And Saturn rules the metal lead. So it's that testing and trial by fire. It's that hard work kind of energy. What can we make from this lump?
Yeah.
and turn it into something that's really useful in some way. So that's some of the energy that we can think about this year is how can we take this difficult experience and translate and transmute that into something that's useful for society. And if we can do that well, Saturn's going to be giving us a big thumbs up. And then we'll keep moving on along. And I had a quote. I brought this quote. I thought this was interesting, just thinking about Saturn, Pluto being in Capricorn. The Italian Prime Minister just said the other day, "Our future and the future of Italy is in our hands. These hands have to be more responsible today than ever before. We don't have any time. Our habits have to change right now. We must give things up for Italy." You can't get more Saturn in Capricorn than that. So we all have a chance to take a look at what can we each individually do, and we each have our own personal missions of why we're here on the planet.
Right.
And I might have said this on your last podcast. I definitely said it to my newsletter list. Is that this is a year where there are going to be countless distractions. I mean, we are just in the beginning of this year, but we have an election happening later in this year. There's going to be a lot of grandstanding. There's going to be a lot of stuff that even gets stirred up because of the coronavirus and how that increases our political divides. So there's going to be a million things to distract us from our own work too. So whatever that is, if it's you showing up in your voice or showing up for your business or your family or whatever, to pay attention and to do your part in terms of what society needs from you, but don't get so distracted that you're not on track with your own personal mission.
You're not on track, yes. And I actually mentioned that in my Sunday podcast this time is, don't fall into the fear. Yes,
Exactly.
be aware of what's happening, take it seriously, but continue on with where you are going.
Exactly.
Don't get distracted.
Yeah, and Mercury, it was retrograding through Pisces. It's in Aquarius, and now it's starting to go back through all 30 degrees of Pisces. So there will be a tendency to still have a bit of a fear mindset, or there being clarity issues and confusion and all of that. So, be gentle with ourselves too. It's part of the times, but as much as we can, stay the course for what we need to, while also taking care of what we need to.
And it's a good thing what you started with, of this being a season, because I think sometimes we think, oh my God, it's going to be like this for the rest of our lives, and remembering, okay, this is just a chunk of time.
It is,
we're getting through it. It's just a season. And then there'll be another season, and then there'll be another one,
Exactly. It is a season, but an influential season.
So these are important times that we are in right now. Life-changing times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be curious to check back in some months, Renee, and we'll see how these energies keep moving. Astrology really is a symbolic language, so you can see the flavors, and you can see some of the energies of what to expect, but how the actual details roll out are often surprising. Oh, it's in the form of a virus. Okay. We knew that the themes would be there in some way, but we might not have known exactly.
That it would have been a virus.
Exactly. Is calling it all out.
Exactly. Fascinating. Yeah. Okay, I want 1 minute, or maybe 2, on our political season right now, and what is coming up and what to expect. I know we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but it's we talked about it briefly last time you were here, and wow, has it been crazy so far?
We did, and we also talked offline after our show last time, Renee, and we both kind of gave each other some thoughts about it, and I would say it's still moving in that direction. I've got an astrologer friend who sees that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at the end of the year in Aquarius, saying, here's a fresh new start for humanity. It means Bernie is going to win, and that's the direction we're headed. I don't see the times quite that way. I see the fear of the people getting stirred up in a big way this year, which can really play well to Donald Trump and his agenda, especially issues around the borders, and that being a big thing that he had been, has been talking about for years. So
who knows, huh?
We shall see, but from the beginning, and I've written my husband an email with my exact prediction of what it would all be, so I can point back like I did the year or the election before and say,
I saw it in the chart.
He still owes me $20 for the last presidential election. I'm not optimistic right away, but again, knowing that these are long cycles and seasons, I'm optimistic eventually.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And
how are you feeling, Renee? Let's
be real. We have a lot of problems right now in our society and our world, and we kind of need some turmoil to wake us the fuck up.
Yes.
And I feel like that is what this whole Saturn-Pluto and all the other things that are happening right now is like, waking us up to inequality and what's happening around the world and our borders and our political, even two parties. Is that working for us?
Exactly.
Perhaps not.
Everything can be up for review.
And I think we're at a point in history where everything needs to be up for review. Like, we have to change.
Yeah.
But that great quote that you just read was, now is the time to take a look at this stuff and change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just look at government here in our country. Nothing can happen. There's so much faction, right?
Yes.
There's just
we're stuck. Yeah.
Something's gotta give, and maybe this will be some of that. Wake-up call that we need.
Yeah, I like to look at it that way. If we're going through it, we might as well look at the positive side. This is the wake-up call that we need.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I would love to have you come back in a couple of months when we get a little bit further along in the political season and talk about, some things that we see then. Also, I appreciate this. You are offering the Abundology podcast listeners, 15% off a 2-hour session with you with using coupon code ABUNDANCE, and that can either be in Zoom meeting or in person. So if you are at home and you're quarantined and you need something to do, this would be a perfect time to Zoom in for a conference or an appointment with you and get a reading about your personal chart to see what's in there.
Exactly. These are big energies, and again, we all have something that we're working on in our lives, whether that's around career, whether that's love life. These issues are going to be highlighted in different ways for different people. So to be able to see your own season, where you are in life, it's really quite eye-opening.
Yeah.
And frankly, when people come and see me, they'll fill out a little intake form, and they don't even need to, because I can just look at the chart and go, oh, I see what season
I know
you're in.
exactly
I know
what's
going on. and you know, when we're looking at mundane astrology, we're looking at governments and society. It's more vague and broad, but when you're looking at a personal chart, the things really get dialed in a much more specific way.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I thank you for making that offer, and thank you for coming, in and back and talking to us about what's going on with the chart right now, so that we can get a bigger view of looking at things and be not so afraid of, the minute things, but looking from a bigger picture of, this is really going to help our society.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you so much, Renee. So happy to be here.